It's time for the Thyworm Weekly Roundup with my curated news and personal gaming endeavors. Are you enjoying these? Consider subscribing. Some big news came from the developers of Torchlight Frontiers, who made a 180-degree turn and have completely changed everything about their game, even the title. I played Torchlight Frontiers for a bit and thought it was one of the most boring, uninspired action RPGs I played in a while. And just for your consideration, I play a lot of these games. It was just no fun. It had some really weird design decisions and the game didn't feel like Torchlight at all, despite the colorful graphics. The changes that are coming are absolutely massive. First, Torchlight Frontiers will be renamed to Torchlight 3. That implies a successor to the beloved Torchlight 1 and 2, and that is exactly what is going to happen. Hopefully. The business model changes as well. It used to be a free-to-play game, but now it's going to be a premium title, so buy to play. And you can play either offline or online. The game moves from Arc, with their dreadful launcher, to Steam. In terms of game features, the game looks a lot more like its predecessors as well. The classic act structure is back instead of having a hub with some random quests in it. Horizontal progression is removed in favor of a more traditional leveling experience. Zones have shifted from mostly being public to being private to improve the playing experience because you don't see other players all the time. You will still be able to hook up with friends in towns, however. And last but not least, the in-game money store is removed. And I'm sure you're thinking, why didn't they just do this from the start? Well, the most likely answer to situations that don't make immediate sense is money. That's usually it. In this case, most likely as well. Because from any other perspective, creating a Torchlight game that wasn't Torchlight 3 is a recipe for disaster. I can appreciate the developers wanting to try something new, and that's fine, but taking Torchlight and turning it into a free-to-play game with a money store was never going to happen. On top of that, like I said, the game was really boring to play. So, even if it took them a significant amount of time to reach the conclusion that Torchlight 3 is a much better way forward than Torchlight Frontiers, I'm still glad they reached that conclusion. In the end, it is better for everyone involved. The devs, the reputation, and most of all us, the players. Last Epoch released patch 0.7.6, which I will cover soon. I've been streaming the new patch already, however, so feel free to check out that content. Overall, amazing patch once more. The devs are doing a stellar job at keeping the game interesting, and I can't wait to see what is next. Stoneshard releases February 7th into early access on Steam. This brutal turn-based RPG is a cult classic in the making, I think, and it has garnered a good amount of hype. They released an early access trailer to go along with it, and you can pick this up for €15. They will soon release more details as well about the future of the game, so stay tuned for that one. Sanctum Breach released patch 1.3. Along with this patch comes a soft wipe of player accounts, because old characters basically start throwing bugs and they won't work anymore. That is perfectly fine and expected, however, because this is still an early access game. Patch 1.3 brings a lot of good changes to the table. The minimap, for example, is now fully functional and rotates with the player's position. There are increased sound effects and volume sliders for music and audio. The UI got revamped. The game now features 6 new shrines, which provide buffs to the player after you defeat the enemies around the shrine. The skill system got overhauled significantly because now there is a skill tree instead of this huge page full of skills. It should streamline the progression a bit more and leaving less choice to the players, which I think in this case is a good thing. As a side effect, the Warbringer and Hexlord class are temporarily disabled because they don't have skill trees yet in the new format. There is an entire new act, Act 3. This is a non-linear act as opposed to the first 2 acts, so you have a lot more freedom in what you're going to explore. There are of course bug fixes and balancing, which I won't dive into. Let's for now just appreciate the amount of work this single indie developer puts in. I might stream the new patch at some point as well here on YouTube. Encased, a post-apocalyptic turn-based RPG with science fiction elements, released their 4th dev update, in which they present what is next for the game. Dark Crystal Games, an indie dev studio, has already delivered a very solid game, which is apparently thousands of players already according to the video. By the way, the voiceover in this video sounds like some sort of AI.
Right now, the Dark Crystal team is working feverishly, creating new content for Encased and improving game mechanics.
Kind of weird, but maybe it is even intentional, who knows. Regardless of weird voiceovers, here are the details. They will release 2 or 3 more big content patches with new maps, weapons, characters, etc. All the stuff you would expect, basically. Nothing new here, as this was already announced before. Some new features not previously mentioned are vantage point in combat to make combat more tactical than it currently is. It takes things like cover bonuses into account and terrain height, which is cool. They will implement a justice system that basically basically functions like karma. Your actions will have an effect on this system and your actions therefore also have consequences. To some extent this is already the case in the current version of the game, because quest outcomes are vastly different depending on your dialogue choices. You can also just open fire on people and your reputation with factions will be influenced in all sorts of manners. This is very interesting and it is about to get better from the look of things. The main quest will also be updated with more branching storylines. There will be additional stories and more specific faction quests. In total the game will contain 3 acts, not including the prologue. Further details and release dates for the next content patch, number 2, will be released soon. Solar Purge, an upcoming co-op sci-fi twin-stick shooter, released a statement. The indie developers, who are all still working part-time and full-time jobs to fund the game, have been working hard on the product, and that is much appreciated because it shows some real dedication here, which is always a good starting point for a game. It doesn't always result in a good game, but it's a prerequisite, I would say. Now, I've had the opportunity to play an alpha build of Solar Purge and it felt already pretty solid. The action and combat are fluid and visceral, the guns really pack a decent punch, the physics make the guns feel impactful, and despite the levels being a bit empty and somewhat repetitive, I had quite a good time with this alpha build. Around the 2nd or 3rd quarter this year the game will launch into early access, so a much wider audience can play it. You can already wishlist it, which is what I've done, and on top of all this there will be a publicly visible roadmap on Trello, just like Wolzen did for example. It's cool because you can see all the features that the devs are working on when something is finished and possibly also when something will be released. The devs teased a new feature as well. An exciting one is online multiplayer with the Steam's remote play together feature, pretty cool stuff. The game will feature a campaign as well, instead of just randomly generated levels in the holo chamber. I think that a campaign in games like these really adds something to the overall experience, and it can also serve as a good tutorial, so I'm happy with this announcement. Weapon perks will make their way into Solar Purge. These are basically modifications to the weapons, so you can get a rapid fire auto shotgun for example. Seems fun. There is a save feature coming, kind of useful I would argue, and that's mostly it from the devs from Hitscan Games. Exciting times, and I really hope the development of this goes well because it's a promising title, I feel. Warhammer Underworld Online released. I talked about this game in my February overview of potentially interesting games. This tabletop conversion has received mixed Steam user reviews so far, 60%. Some are praising the game for staying very true to the tabletop game, and quite some positive reviews mention the negatives, but feel this is acceptable because it is an early access game. The negative reviews point out that there are core features missing, like inviting friends, quite vital for a 2 versus 2 game. The lack of single player is mentioned a lot, and a fair number of bugs, of course. It seems this game has reached early access maybe a little bit too early, as is often the case unfortunately. Something that also doesn't help is the price tag, which is honestly pretty insane for an early access game that just released in this state. It is 30 euros, which is very steep. The devs have responded to the initial feedback and made a list of priorities they're working on. Party invites is one of those, but no timelines have been given yet. A patch or 2 already made their way into the game as well. The devs also respond to some of the Steam posts, so they seem to be on top of it. Regardless though, this may be a game you want to give a month or 2 before trying it out. Don't Die Minerva released its 3rd big content patch. They're still holding on to the same philosophy, which is to increase content and streamline the experience. Compared to the previous 2 content updates, this one really doesn't add all that much. 2 new enemies and 1 new feature for the dungeon generator, which is somewhat disappointing, I feel. The remainder of the patch is just balancing, bug fixes and polishing, and while that is all very appreciated, I'm not sure this patch holds enough new content to actually label it as a content update. However, the devs released a roadmap at the same time, and this cute little indie game's got some interesting features coming up. In March, Steam and Xbox Live achievements. In April, abilities. In this case, offensive and defensive abilities for Minerva, the protagonist. She is now somewhat passive, mostly spawning friendlies and shooting with the flashlight, so this is about to change. In May, charms, which are potions that provide temporary or permanent buffs. June brings curses, which are basically map modifiers that give you a debuff. Along with this comes a challenge you need to complete for additional rewards. July implements fragments, which are items you find on your journey that can be unlocked and deciphered or identified in more classical terms. Yet another way to find some highly special shiny loot. And apart from that, more variety of features and items already in the game, such as the flashlight guns, friendlies and of course loot. There's no release date yet, but the devs expect the game to be ready for release at the end of the summer. Some personal updates. I've been playing last Epoch patch 0.7.6 a lot, of course. Expect a video on that soon, like I said. I've also been streaming the game, trying out new builds, so if you want to see more extensive gameplay, there are a few VODs available for last Epoch. I don't have set streaming days, but you can subscribe to the channel and be notified when I go live. From Xbox Game Pass, which is the actual deal of the century, I've been playing my time in Purge. My lord, that is some addictive gameplay right there. It's a game from Team 17, the guys and girls who once developed Worms, if you can remember that. One of my favorite games ever, Worms 2 and Worms Armageddon. And now they created this beauty. If you like crafting, storytelling and overall casual gameplay that still offers a ton of variety and complexity, this game is for you. You're this newcomer on an island, a builder, and you're just slowly going to build up your own workshop. Help the people in the village by crafting them stuff, building bridges to allow access to other parts of the island, etc, etc. It's really a lot of fun and I'm quite addicted to this whole thing. And that's all I have for you this week. Follow me on Twitter. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you all next week. Love you all. Bye bye.